Hey everybody, it's Pastor Siri. I'm a spiritual seeker and a Lutheran pastor, both at the same time. And today I want to talk about a subject that's really important for us to talk about today, for everybody, for all times and all places and all religions and spiritualities. But because I do live and work in the Lutheran Christian world, I think we need to talk about mental health and Christianity. So take a listen. All right, so first I'm going to start by telling you a story. In 2011, there was this one random night in which I got like 3 hours of sleep. There were circumstances around why I only had 3 hours of sleep, but it was awful. I'm not someone who does well on not a lot of sleep. And so I did kind of what I thought I should do. I exercised, I drank water, I went outside and got a lot of vitamin D. And these were the basic things that I'd heard that would help to promote sleep. And to really sort of put things over the top, I took a Tylenol PM and I waited for a good night's sleep. That night I got, ready, drum roll, zero hours of sleep. It was awful. Talk about being a zombie. It was the whole next day I could barely function. I didn't know what to do. I was starting to really panic. I had never had this in my life. My anxiety shot through the roof. I kept trying the tools. I was drinking the chamomile tea. The next night of sleep, hardly any sleep. And you can bet that, of course, at some point in these nights, I was praying, "Dear God, please let me go to sleep. Please let me go to sleep. Please let me go to sleep." It didn't help. I was at the point after just a few days of this where I wanted to go to the ER and beg them to please put a syringe in me of something, I don't care what, to help me go to sleep, force me to go to sleep, override whatever is going on in here to make me go to sleep. Instead, I was referred to a sleep doctor. And the sleep doctor was wonderful and helped get me on a sleep schedule and do some important sleep hygiene, which was going to help me long term. These are habits and patterns that I still use to this day. But along the way, I was prescribed a beautiful little pill called Ambien, which was literally the life preserver for me while I felt like I was drowning in water. This is a great example of how all of those great tools of sleep hygiene, which again, I still use to this day, are helpful in the long term. It's like learning how to swim in water. But if someone's been thrown overboard and they don't know how to swim, coming up alongside them in a boat and going, "Do you want me to teach you how to swim?" is not the answer. In that moment, what anybody really needs is to be dragged out of the water. They need a life preserver. They need something. And anyone who's had severe mental health issues is going to say that that sort of interaction, whether it's medication, a combination of therapy and other such things, can really help to give that life-preserving moment. But here was a really weird moment. When I was talking with my sleep doctor, I had this awareness. I said, it's weird because I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Deep inside, I feel like something's wrong with me, that I can't figure this out. And I remember she looked at me as I was talking and she's like, "This isn't a moral issue." And I said, "I know that here, but something deep in here, deep down," and I didn't even know where I got it from, certainly not from my family or from my mom who was a therapist, but something deep in me felt like I had failed as a person, that I could not figure out on my own how to reduce my anxiety enough to go to sleep. Oftentimes, as people of faith, we have received messages and passed on really harmful messages about mental health. Sometimes it is in the silence of us not talking about it at all, and sometimes it's actually in the things that we've said. Things that we think are biblical, things that we think are Christian and faithful. One of those messages might be that if you have really strong faith, that you should be able to pray anything away. And this is really harmful because there are so many people around this world who've prayed in the midst of horrible circumstances for themselves and for others, and that prayer has not come true. And so that ends up being a case in which people victim blame each other, and you end up victim blaming yourself. You think, I thought I had faith. Do I not have enough faith to cure me, to fix me? We've often made mental health issues, whether it's anxiety, depression, or mental illness, whatever it is, we've often made it to be like a lack of faith. But even worse, we've often attributed these things with sort of like demonic possession or something like that. And people might even cite the Bible for that there's a couple passages in which Jesus seems to encounter people with demonic possession, that in modern day eyes, we can look at some of the behaviors of the people in the story and say, oh, there seem to be displaying acts of like schizophrenia or this or that. So maybe these are really just demon possessions, but we're giving them mental health, mental illness things, and we just need to pray it away or exorcise them. This is spiritual abuse, because people who've experienced deep mental illness and mental health issues are not made better by exorcisms and praying it away. And it has caused so much shame, so much fear, so much guilt on people who are suffering. So many people have been struggling around the world with mental health issues, regardless of their religion and regardless of their lack of faith. And it has been completely unfair for us to put on them that they're not praying hard enough, that they're not trying hard enough, that they need to just do X, Y, and Z. Again, it's like swimming up to somebody and you're coming up to someone in your boat who's drowning and saying, do you want swimming lessons? You just need to believe that you can swim. It doesn't work. It's not helpful. When we read the stories in the Bible, it's really, really important for us to remember that these were not mental health professionals who were writing these, just like these were not gynecologists and obstetricians who were writing these stories in the Bible. There's a lot of really weird things in the Bible that don't really line up very well with science or medicine and other pieces. The point of these stories that we encounter in the Gospels is that Jesus encountered people who were suffering, and he had compassion on them, and he had the power to be able to cure and heal him. Jesus is like a PhD level living human being, when the most of us are like third grade living understanding. That's the thing about saying just have faith and you can magically do these things, is that there's actually techniques and things you might be able to learn over years and years and years with lots of practice that might allow you to do some healing on your body, mind, and soul in really interesting ways. But this is literally a massive practice that we do not focus on in Christianity. While I do believe that we can learn how to be more like Jesus, it starts first with having compassion. And if the way that we are treating other people in suffering is not compassionate and is making them feel worse, making them hate themselves more, making them spiral even deeper into depression and worthlessness, we're doing the wrong thing. And that is often what's happened with the way we've talked about mental health and mental illness in the church. So here's what I recommend for pastors, for anybody really. 1, talk and learn about mental health issues. Educate yourself. If you've ever had a mental health crisis, you know someone else that has, start having conversations about that. That is something that more and more pastors and people of faith are trying to do, is to normalize conversations about mental health and to normalize the struggles that we have with mental health. One more story about that. About a month into the pandemic in 2020, when things were all shut down, I have a lovely family. I was home with my husband and 2 kids, and my kids were doing well with online school. But there was just this one day where I was just feeling really depressed, and I think things had been getting kind of closing in on me for a while. And I needed to go grocery shopping, and I literally couldn't decide between the 3 closest grocery stores next to me. And my husband came up to me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I just burst into tears and I said, "I can't decide where to go. I can't make a decision. I'm not doing very well. In that moment, what I needed was compassion. And my husband said, okay, I will make the decision and I will go with you. And so he did, and we went grocery shopping. And I came home and then I made a list of all of the things that help me mentally, because I literally needed to write them down to remind myself on a daily basis how to keep myself above water. Because I do have tools and I do have tricks that I use, and we should be sharing those. For me, going on walks and exercising, for me, dancing and music. There's lots of things that are really important to me. Calling people, seeing people in person are really helpful for my mental health. So knowing what kind of keeps you above water is really important. But also we need to remember that if we or anyone else is actually having a moment where we're drowning, that instead of blaming them or saying, what did you not do? That in that moment, what they really need is someone to pull them out of the water. And that can often be crisis phone calls, that can be therapy, that can be medication. We have a long way to go in talking about mental health, because in reality, most of our planet is pretty traumatized. We're carrying a lot of genetic trauma in our bodies. And there's a lot that we have to do to unpack that and to get towards healing. And I really believe that the number one thing we can do to move towards healing is to have compassion. If something heals and makes you feel loved, it's probably the right direction. If something, a theology, no matter where you can point to it in the Bible, harms people, especially when they're at their most vulnerable, it is not the right answer. It is not the loving thing to do, and it is not of God. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time.